Hello and welcome to From Field to Skin, a series of interviews chronicling Ash Alberg's adventures in the Canadian fibre shed. Our 8th episode is a little bit special because you'll be sitting with just me and Willow as we talk about developing an all-natural sock yarn, and it was recorded in January 2019 on Treaty 1 territory in Manitoba. You can find out more about me at Sunflower Knit or at From Field to Skin on Instagram, or by visiting ashalberg.com or fromfieldtoskin.com. Hello, this is a little bit of a different setup for our episodes. Today I'm going to be talking about making an all-natural sock yarn and how I went about doing that process and how you could go about doing that process and what to look for when you are looking for an all-natural sock yarn. Excuse me, Willow is going to be assisting because she has very strong feelings about any time I'm in front of the camera. So we are going to hope that I can sort of keep her focused while we are recording this. So you'll see some other clips in this episode as well. But basically I went about creating an all-natural sock yarn sort of by accident, and that was because I was first introduced to all-natural sock yarns I guess last year, so it's 2019 now, and it was almost a year ago now that I went to Ontario for the very first forage collection, and I met Laura from Twin Oaks Farm, and at that point I already had a skein of her yarn, so I guess that was probably 2 years ago I was introduced to it, because I grabbed the first skein of yarn from her before I actually met her in person. And can you sit please? On your bed. Thank you. Lie down. Good girl. Thank you. And so then I actually got to go to Laura's farm and meet her sheep. And so Laura's farm, she has a small fiber flock. Small, I mean like 30-ish sheep now, I think. And she purchased them from people who had already been developing the sheep and breeding them for their fleeces. And so the sock yarn recipe that she has, which is 70% Romney and a 30% mohair sock yarn, was actually the recipe that these people had already been doing, and so she's just continued it because it's perfect sock yarn. And so her Romney sheep, which create a really beautiful, durable, longer wool, she then blends with mohair from the mill where she gets her socks spun at, and that's Wellington Fibers, and it's just 20 minutes up the road from her. And the woman who runs Wellington Fibers happens to have Angora goats, and so it's this perfect, beautiful little microcosm of how to make the ideal sock yarn. And that was really my first foray into using a non-superwash, non-merino sock yarn. And the more, I loved them as soon as I pulled those first pair on, and those are my Sorel socks. Sorry, not Sorel. Sorel are my boots. The Sorel socks. And the first time I pulled them on, I was like, oh, this is what socks are supposed to be like, because I happen to have sweaty feet all the time, but especially if you're somebody who's outdoors, who's walking a lot, if you do a lot of hiking, or if you work outdoors, you know that socks are necessary, and the perfect sock is necessary. And so I love hand knit socks because to me they're a hug for your feet, and it took me a little while into my knitting life, like it was only a few years ago that I started knitting socks, but once I did, I didn't understand before why people were so, like sock knitters are just, they are diehards, they're sock knitters to the end, and I didn't understand it until I knit my first pair, and then I was like, oh, it's because they are a hug for your feet, and they're perfect. And so for a really long time, I'd been knitting with superwash merino because that's generally what is sold from the various commercial and indie dyers, which is totally fine, and usually it's blended with some nylon, and so that is what is considered a strong sock yarn. But in reality, nothing about that is actually good for socks. Nylon is a synthetic fiber, so it's not good for the environment. Merino is actually a really poor choice for a sock blend. And that's because not only are merino staples generally shorter, but they are also really soft yarn. So that's why it's great as a fiber to wear next to your skin. She hears the birds. But it is not great as a fiber to make a really durable sock yarn that is not going to get holes in it. Sit. Thank you. Lie down, please. Thank you. And so it's the combination of both the softness and the short staple length that makes it not ideal. There are other breeds that have similarly short staple lengths or even shorter ones, but it's still a really durable fiber. And so for that reason, they still make okay sock yarns or even really great sock yarns, because even though when it's plied, there are shorter staples, so there's more locations where there could be breakage, it's a stronger fiber, so it doesn't break as easily. Not so with merino. And then the superwash process is actually just generally not a good thing. It's a very popular option, but a large part of that has been, for a variety of reasons, the more that we've been pulled away from our textile production process and our understanding of natural fibers and their different qualities, and why you would use different breeds for different things, all of that has led to people relying on superwash as a way of having an easier time to care for your knits, but it's actually not necessary. And what the superwash process does, there's generally two different ways of doing it, and in both cases you're descaling your fiber. So the reason that wool felts is because the little fibers, the little scales on the fibers, they stick together, and so with enough agitation and heat, then they can felt together and create a really durable fabric, which is great if you want it, not great if you don't want it. And it also then tends to shrink the fabric together. So often that's what we don't want, and so the superwash process makes that not a thing because you're descaling the fiber. And so the way that happens is that it is either coated in polymer, so plastic, so either your wool is coated in plastic, in which case and now it's not going to stick together, or chemicals strip the scales off of it. So in either case, not good for the environment, not good for anything, and it is removing the actual qualities of the wool that you're using to begin with. So, and especially when it's coated in plastic, when we think about like, oh, you know, my feet are more likely to sweat than other parts of my body, it might get stinkier, and or that's, you know, where, like, there's so many things that can go wrong with sweaty areas of your body as far as health things. And so we're always looking for what's breathable, what is going to make my feet not sweat even more or not get stinky because of bacteria. And it's breathability that's really important. And so if you're wearing hand knit socks that happen to be superwashed and blended with nylon, you've now added layers of plastic that don't breathe, and so now your feet won't do as well. And that's not to say that those yarns are not, you know, an option. It's just that if we think about why do we choose the fibers that we choose for the different uses that we are using them, a superwash nylon blend sock yarn is not actually ideal for making a strong, durable, long-lasting sock that lets our feet breathe, so that when we go hiking or when we are working outside doing chores or when we're taking the dog for a walk, that our feet are able to breathe and stay warm at the same time. So for all of those reasons, going into all natural sock yarns is ideal, but how do you know what to look for? So when I was first introduced to Laura's yarn and I pulled those socks on once they were done, I was like, oh, these are the socks that I would pull on if I was going hiking. My other socks, fine. If I'm in the city, whatever. I have gone dancing at weddings for like 5 hours straight in hand knit socks that were not all natural sock yarns, and my feet were fine. But if I was going hiking, I would not pull those socks on. I would be pulling on my all natural sock yarns. And so I got introduced to it and I was like, this is amazing. And so when I started thinking about my 2019 sock collection, my sock collections that I've been doing have traditionally been with working with a single indie dyer and showing off their different colorways, which is a lot of fun. But what I was more interested in for this year and I think probably for years moving forward, realistically, was trying out different sock yarns that were all natural. So no superwash, no plastic, no synthetic fibers, and also nothing like bamboo, which in theory is a natural fiber, but in reality goes through so much processing that it may as well be synthetic by the time it's done. So I wanted to find, what are the ideal breeds that I'm looking for to make a good sock yarn for Canada and for my life in Canada. And so I started doing research into breeds, and I found out what different breeds were good for sock yarns. To be fair, that research for the most part so far has focused on northern breeds, so I don't know closer to the equator what the ideal sock yarns are made of, or what breeds in warmer climates work well. From most of my research so far within kind of this upper portion of the hemisphere, and further away from the equator, the breeds that grow really well in more temperate climates don't make good sock yarns because their fleeces don't need to be as durable. And so it's really these like rugged mountain and or island breeds that tend to do really well. And so a really great resource book, and I'll stick a link to it in the show notes, is the Field Guide to Fleece. And so it breaks things down really well and tells you the different uses for a lot of different breeds, and it's a great starting point. So I, lie down please, thank you. So I started off with that, and then just started researching and trying to find out, what are the breeds that grow here in Canada. If I'm looking at sock yarns in other countries, then what are the breeds that I should be looking for? And so in some cases you can find those things, and in other cases you can't. So in situations like I don't know, if a yarn is coming from Finland and it just says Finnish wool, I don't know what the breeds are in Finland kind of across the board. So I might decide, okay, well, I will use that yarn, and I'll make socks out of it like I'm doing with Tuku wool. But they're not necessarily socks that I would then go and wear hiking again, because it's it's gonna have more wear in it, but I would wear them wandering around the house or just doing errands in the city where they're not getting loads of wear and tear. And then just knowing how to darn them if a hole does crop up, or how to take care of them. So, lie down please. Thank you. So that was kind of how I got started, and then it sort of went from there. Initially I just, lie down. I just figured that I would find a fleece and test it out, and then I figured, okay, well, I'll blend it with mohair. Lie down please. Thank you. I'd blend it with mohair. No, lie down, you're being antsy. And that was because mohair is a really strong fiber. It's known as nature's nylon, which is ironic because obviously it was here before nylon, but whatever. It's a really strong fiber, so even if you have a fleece that you're not totally sure if it's going to make a durable enough sock yarn for what you want, or if it's a breed that doesn't traditionally make a durable sock yarn, blend it with mohair, magical things happen. So I figured, okay, well, I would like to develop my own sock yarns that are using local wool and local mohair. And conveniently for me, Barb, who runs Prairie's Edge Wool Farm, has Angora goats and grows has mohair from those Angora goats. So she's who I ended up sourcing my mohair from. But first, I accidentally forgot how silent auctions work, and at Fiber Festival in 2018, Manitoba Fiber Festival, I won 6 fleeces. Oops. And so 4 of those fleeces I had chosen because I knew these would make great sock yarns, and if I get one of them, that's great, and I can test this out. Ended up coming home with all 4 of them. So I've been working with Anna at Longway Homestead to develop sock yarns. And we're just super happy with the product. They're beautiful, and I'll show them to you. But the breeds that I got them from, all of these fleeces, were either Wensleydale and or Romneys. And so both of those breeds are really sturdy, durable, long wool breeds and make really great sock yarns on their own. And then I've been blending them with mohair. And so it's just been making these really stunning sock yarns. And so then Anna and I decided, okay, if we're going to go into this, what do we want? I knew that I wanted a fingering weight yarn because that's typically what I knit my socks out of. And that I wanted it to be multiple plies. And I find that a 3-ply is a really good strong yarn. 2-ply is okay if you're dealing with house socks or socks where you're not, again, like going hiking or going camping in them. But I find I like a 3-ply for a really strong yarn. You generally don't want a single ply for a sock yarn because that is more likely to felt. Not a bad thing in terms of having a strong fabric. Not so great if you're then trying to stretch it over your foot, because generally for a good sock fit, then you want some negative ease in the sock so that it stretches and fits to your foot. So we experimented with the first fleece and got some really beautiful 2-ply and 3-ply skeins out of it. And then we've got now the third fleece in production at the mill, and might even be done by the time I'm filming this. And so we've been making these 3-ply sock yarns with about 400 yards to the skein. And the really interesting thing that I've been finding is that the weight of the fibers is very different from what you would traditionally be purchasing your sock yarns from an indie dyer for. And that is because merino is a lighter fiber, it turns out. So generally you find that sock yarns will be, you know, it's like a merino yarn and it's a fingering weight, and so there's about 400 meters per 100 grams. Well, we're making these yarns and they are about 140 to 150 grams. And that's because the fibers are so much heavier, but it still is giving us our 400 yards and still giving us a really reliable, beautiful, stable fingering weight yarn. So the weight of the fiber is literally denser and so therefore heavier, which is something that I'm finding really interesting as I delve more into working with different breeds and understanding them a bit more. So yeah, it's been an interesting process. And I'm just taking a look at my notes about what else I wanted to tell you. So I've got a number of different sock yarns, all natural sock yarns that I will show you and kind of explain A, who they came from, and then B, what the breeds are. Should I know them? Tuku wool, I don't know. It's just Finnish wool, that's all I know. But it will make a really nice sock by the end. And so I've also knit them up, or knit up a number of them into little stars. So then you can see, you know, how do they compare to each other in terms of drape and in terms of just density, and all the rest of that. So I'll show you those, and hopefully it gives you a bit of a visual idea of all the different options that are out there as far as sock yarns go. If you are interested in going further into this, again, Field Guide to Fleece is a great starting place for learning about different fleeces and different breeds. So the different sock yarns, and there's so many different options out there, and so I just want to give you a visual representation of what they do. And so, like I said, Field Guide to Fleece is a really great starting point if you're curious, and not just for socks, but just in general. What are the different breeds? What do we use them for? What are they really useful for? What are they not going to be as great for? So understanding that merino and cormo are great for next to the skin wear, but not great if you want something that is durable, a durable yarn that is going to make really great outerwear or really great socks or something like that. So that's a really great starting point. You can also purchase the Operation Sock Drawer zine from the shop tab, and so that is a digital PDF, and it's a 15-page zine that I pulled together that goes into the different breeds that are good for socks that you can be looking for. Talks a little bit more about mohair and superwash, and it also talks about how to care for, like how to source the best sock yarn for your all natural socks, and then how to knit your socks in a way where you're going to have a stronger sock, and then how do you care for those socks so that they last longer. What are all of those kind of steps of creating a sock drawer that is all natural? Lie down. Yeah, all natural sock yarn, and then also companies that at the time of publication in December 2018 were creating all natural sock yarns that I knew about. Obviously, it is not an exhaustive list, but it is a list that gives you a starting point, and is primarily between North America and Europe, and I think those might be the only continents that are represented, but there's a bunch of different countries within both. So if you're looking for something that is a little bit more local, then you can check that out. And in Canada, there are more and more options that are cropping up. And so I will list the current options also in the show notes for Canadians. And then, yeah, if you're looking for something else, check out Operation Sock Drawer zine for that. And then you can also check out the Pleiades collection is the 2019 sock collection, and 4 of the 7 sock patterns that are going to come out over the course of the year will be from Canadian sock yarns, or Canadian yarn companies, creating all natural sock yarns. And then the other 3, one is Tuku Wool, and then the other 2 are from UK-based suppliers. And so Pleiades is available on Ravelry, and it comes with the Operation Sock Drawer zine. So if you're interested in sock patterns and the zine, awesome. If you only want the zine because you're just interested, you have a favorite sock pattern and you're just interested in a little bit more detail about all natural socks and how to care for them and how to source them, then that is an option for you as well. So I think that's basically everything, and I'll show you a few bits of the different sock yarns and their different qualities, and then we've also got some clips of the fleeces that I brought home by accident, and then next episode is actually going to be about mini mills. And so Anna at Longway Homestead operates a mini mill, and so if you're interested in the actual production side of it and the spinning side of it, then stay tuned for that episode, because we will go more in depth with that, and so you'll be able to see the actual spinning of yarns, both sock yarns and otherwise. Okay, so let's first talk about what your different sock yarn options might be. These are just obviously a very few options, but I just wanted to kind of go through different ones with you so that you can see what could a natural sock yarn look like. Willow has been locked out, and you may hear her whining, and that is because she is incapable of leaving a flat lay alone. So first, let's start off with our flock fingering from Fleece and Harmony. So it is a blend of mohair and then their usual blend, which is 60% lamb's wool, 40% ewes wool. So that is a way, again, of strengthening a yarn that might not otherwise work well for a sock yarn. Just add in some mohair and you're good to go. Next up, we've got Tuku Wool. So this is a finish wool, and this is just their fingering weight. I don't actually know what breeds they use, and I'm totally curious about it, but I have not reached out to them to find out exactly what breeds go into their yarn. But it makes a really cozy, lovely yarn. And it's very soft, especially once you've blocked it. So it would be great for especially home socks, I think. Next up, we have Woolly Mammoth's sock yarn. So Emma has a few different blends that actually would have worked well on their own, but she's actually developed a natural sock that is exclusive for her, and it is 50% BFL, 50% Cheviot. And the Cheviot is, you've probably heard of BFL. It makes a great sock yarn on its own, but Cheviot is also a really great long wool. And so she's created a very durable sock yarn base that she is then able to use natural dyes on really nicely. Next we have our mohair blends, and this is from Blacker Yarns. And so Blacker Yarns focuses on especially heritage breeds in the UK. And so their mohair blend, this particular one, is blended with Manx and mohair, and it's specifically meant to be a sock yarn, and it is beautiful and super soft and has a really beautiful luster because of the amount of mohair in it. So that's that one. We have here just my little star of Laura's Romney and mohair. I love her yarn, and so you're looking for Tilly and Friends sock, and this particular colorway, the silver, is Harry and Friends. And so the reason it's Harry and Friends is because it ends up being one particular older sheep and then a blend of similar fleeces from others. So there might be 3 or 4 sheep's fleeces in it, but they're all the same color, so that she is then able to get a beautiful naturally colored batch. This year she's got a dark gray, a light gray, like this guy, the silver, and then a natural color. And then finally we have a beautiful, mostly mohair, and then a little bit of a Dorset Charolais, which I believe is a sheep that is common-ish in Quebec, but I could be wrong. And this is from Fox Print Fibers, and she does beautiful natural dyes, and I'm actually going to show you another one of her sock yarns. So she again works with natural dyes, but you can see from this there's a huge amount of luster. It looks a little bit thinner, but it's a super sturdy sock yarn, and it's just a gorgeous color, and shines really nicely because of the fact that it's 75% mohair. You don't always need blends though. What you can see on the right is a 100% BFL, non-treated, so it's not superwash, it's just BFL, which is Blueface Luster. And so that has been dyed with Goldenrod from Fox Print Fibers again. And then on the left is actually 100% Corriedale, also untreated, and Anna spun this for me at Longway Homestead in order to make a base for my dyeing classes. And so Corriedale takes dye beautifully, but it's also a sturdy enough wool to make a great sock yarn on its own. So it is 100% Corriedale, it weighs 140 grams, and you've got your 399 yards per skein, which is a great amount for a pair of socks. And it's great because it's a really basic yarn, just to look at it, but it's perfect for dyeing, and then it doesn't need anything added to it. So it's if you find a Corriedale yarn, that is a great option for sock yarn too. And then finally, I would be remiss if I did not show you the finished results of at least a couple of my sock yarns. We've got 2 more still at the mill, but you can see here, these are on the left is the Wensleydale Rams fleece, which was a natural charcoal fleece, and so that's blended 70% with 30% mohair. And both of these, all of the fleeces for my sock yarns came from Spirit Sands Shepherds, and then blended with mohair from Prairie's Edge Wool Farm. And so this one on the right, which is a beautiful creamy bright white, is also a naturally colored fleece. And it is a Wensleydale cross. And we've got a Romney and then a Wensleydale Romney cross fleece that are still being processed. But I'm really in love with them, and financially not the most effective or cost-effective life choice that one could make, but they're super satisfying. So I don't know that I'll make a special edition sock yarn on a regular basis moving forward, but it's been a really fun learning process for me, and I'm really happy with how they've turned out. So yeah, definitely recommend it if you are in love with socks and like sock knitting and happen to have access to good fleeces. that are from breeds that will give you a good sock yarn. So there you go. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next month.